Mr. Edgar here, folks, and this is a Smith and Wesson Model 5906. This is a full-scale model, folks. I know that I've shown you the Model 39, which is really a wonderful little pistol. Not so little, it's a moderate size. This guy is the big deal. 38 ounces. She's got some heft to her. She's sweet. She shoots very similar to the 39. And the action is almost exactly the same. I'll show you the breakdown in a little bit. But just one comment. Based on this size, this is a full-size model. It's also a double stack. Carries 15 rounds. As a double stack, it's going to be a little fatter in the hand. The 39, of course, is a single stack, so people with smaller hands, like mine, are going to find the 39 is probably a little easier to hold. Felt recoil, though, is almost non-existent. Now, this is a 9mm, but at 38 ounces, with that kind of heft, it just really doesn't have much recoil at all. Triggers, well, trigger on double action. This is a double action, single action. Notice that it's empty. Show a little safety. Nothing up my sleeve. Single action, pretty smooth. I would call it somewhere in the middle for good quality guns. It's got that Smith and Wesson clack to it. But the double action, which you have to reach for if you've got a small hand like mine, it's got a little bit of pull to it. Okay, now it's not like shooting a Makarov, but you're going to have a pretty steady hand, I think, to shoot it well in the double action. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to exaggerate it and say that it's a monster. It's not. It's a full metal, this is just a full metal gun with lots of heft. Let's take a look at how you break her down. A couple of things I probably should note for you before we do the breakdown. This has an ambidextrous decocker, which is really kind of a nice feature. And the decocker really is a pretty effective safety decocker. When it's cocked, you pull that down, obviously it does the decock, but what you'll find is that there's a block within this. It's difficult to see, but there's actually a block that comes up in place that stays in the way of the hammer, so it's extremely difficult for this to fail. I don't want to use the term it can't fail, there's no such thing, but it is really very, very reliable as a safety. It's also got what I'm not so crazy about, but I know it's required for the police units. It's got a magazine safety. The gun will not fire with a magazine pulled out. I guess that's not really a big deal for most of us. I'm not crazy about magazine safeties, but there are those who argue for it, and I guess they do have an actual. By the way, did I mention that Sarah on the show Chuck, you know, Sarah Walker, she uses one of these. Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it? Breakdown. It's going to be very similar to 39 and a lot of other automatics where you have to push the pin on this side to push out the slide lock, and then you're going to be able to slide this forward. So you're going to rack this back a bit, push that pin just enough to get that out. You'll see how it'll push the pin out. You'll lift the slide block. There's a little tension to it. Get that out, let her go forward a little, gently, and then you'll just pull this forward. Now this one, you heard that clack. This one, the guide rod and the spring do tend to stay in place if everything is in good shape here. As they get older, this may tend to pop out a little bit. And just like with the 39, you're going to see that there's a ridge. Not easy to see with a particular light, but there's a ridge along here, and if this starts to get a little worn and that slips out, you're going to find that you've got to seat this guide rod nib within that ridge, so you may actually have to use it vertically to get it to seat well if there's some wear and tear on it. Okay, just take the guide rod out. Very ordinary guide rod. The barrel comes out just like many, many other automatics. Very similar arrangement. And that's the breakdown of the pistol. She's easy enough to put back together. There she is. Oh, by the way, did I mention that Sarah Walker on the show Chuck carries one of these? Yeah, that's another excuse to be cool. I like that. She's easy enough to put back together, very similar. Now there's one or two little oddball things about this one in comparison to some of the other pistols. That snaps in nicely, by the way. You push that forward. Now what you're going to see are these levers. This is the ejector, this is the ejector rod, and this is what's called a trigger release lever. You're going to have to push these down to get the slide to go forward. These have to be pushed down, and it's easier actually to start out, believe it or not, with a hammer up. So once you get those pushed back, you can pull the hammer back, slide the slide lock in place, pull this back until they're about lined up, and you can get the guide rod to snap down. And locked it in. That's it for the Model 5906. What a great gun. I'm going to show you a range review as well. I find this thing very easy to shoot accurately. I guess it's probably the weight, because it's an all steel frame. It's got that 38 ounces, and to me that is sweet. Felt recoil is low. The sights are reasonable. They're not, they're not range sights particularly, but you can still do a nice tight group at 10-15 yards with this baby. Thanks a lot for watching.